Bro, the Trump glaze at opposition is unreal. Look at me. Buddha said that life is uncertain. I cannot be a Jyotish and prove to you that who's going to win the next 2028 election. For all I know, people could start adoring Zoran Mamdani a lot and he could be next president. I have no idea. The problem is, the clash that they want to win this debate on is that there exists no alternative. The problem is that Trump cannot run the next election for you. Trump does not want to run the next election for you. He's getting old. By US constitutional law, he cannot run the next election for you. He does not want to endorse on the candidate because he's a cult of personality and he has openly said that he does not want any people who can succeed him. Then what does that mean? What is the incentive for this guy to backlash on you, but more importantly, vouch for you? Both of these don't exist. I don't think this is the clash of this debate. The clash of this debate is simple. On what side does the Republican Party make a safer choice? They say that MAGA is very relevant. Here are three reasons why it's not. Most of MAGA is concentrated within the seats that are already heavily Republican converted. This looks like seats like, I don't know, Wyoming. This looks like seats like Florida, etc., right? Which heavily align with just the Republican incentive of itself. It's not specifically catering to MAGA. Second, there is growing dissatisfaction because this guy has no stability in the kind of policy and economy that it can it can inherently build upon, right? This is traditional Republican values. Do free business, have some freedom, engage with American national identity. This guy has nothing on that, right? But more importantly, his energy crisis has now affected direct standards of living of these people, which means that things like No King's protest, things like Mighty America now engaging and negotiating with terrorists, and things like that inherently still exist in status quo, right? But lastly, they say that Trump is going to end your career if you are the alternative next to him. Well, how? What's the incentive that this guy has? But most importantly, it's his last term, right? He wants to keep up his legacy. How can he now risk the only legacy that he has made by going against the very institution of the very party? I think even he understands the nuances behind the idea of this party, having an alternative or having a replacement candidate instead of him, right? I don't think then they have to prove that they'll get someone who can endorse, who can be endorsed by Trump. And Trump has shown that this is a revealed preference that he does not want to. What do we do in this debate, and what are the two significant extensions that are debate winning? One will prove that you prevent a lot of fragmentation among the Republicans because Trump is a cult of personality. But second, we also go ahead and now have flexible party campaign policy, which can lead you to have a more safer and a better election cycle run in 2028. Why is Trump fragmenting? Trump is a highly polarizing figure. Elections in 2018 show that large swing states were driven by either pro-Trump or anti-Trump turnout by the Republicans, right? Also, in multiple election cycles, Republican candidates have performed differently in races depending on candidate profile and messaging. So examples like this are Brian Kemp and Glenn Youngkin, right? They won competitive statewide races without strong alignment with Donald Trump. And this is very recent. But more importantly, even Trump endorsed candidates like, Blake Masters, they still lost in 2022 and in 2024, despite having Trump support, right? Which means that Republican candidates in competitive states have had mixed results depending on how closely they were associated with this guy. Which means that there is fragmentation in terms of voter bases that you have within the Republican Party that inherently vote on the basis of who you like, or do you agree with the radical manifestation of what Trump has made the Republican Party out of? Which means that this shows a lack of unified and reliable electoral strategy in the past. But also, association with a single figure like Donald Trump is now creating uneven candidate quality, which means that it can have losses in different seats by your own voter base, let alone now focusing on swing voters. This is strategically bad when you're entering this election, right? But more importantly, the traditionalists within the party hate Trump. This looks like Mitt Romney, who voted to convict Trump in the both impeachment trials of 2020 and 2021. This looks like Liz Cheney. This looks like Adam Kinzinger, examples that show gives to you. But more importantly, it even looks like fired families that have backed the Republican Party for centuries, like George Bush, who did not endorse Trump and made indirect criticisms of the party's direction when they were voting or rooting for Trump, right? What does this do then? This reduces the kind of conversion that you have within the Senate, because in swing states, you are internally fighting among your own voters before you can bring the fight to the Democrats. But secondly, the overall efficiency that you have in the kind of resources that you can allocate in the national campaign is extremely lesser, which means that now the Republicans have to deal with all of this if they keep Trump within this thing. But also then their intention to this is that, you reduce funding. I think as long as the candidate you can push is non-fear mongering, has a clear economic policy, has no intentions of promoting neo-colonialism and blocking important pathways like the Strait of Hormuz and causing energy crisis that can lead to like companies losing a lot of money, right, means that they can still fund you as long as you provide a safer alternative. You have time to do that. We are buying you time. But the impact, if this continues and you don't prevent this fragmentation, is simple. You will win fewer seats. That's structurally possible, which means that you can now have a weaker Congress representation even if you don't win the election, which means that you have to maximize the kind of seats that you can win. Secondly, you can distance the secondly, when you distance, you can reduce the kind of negative polarization that you have due to Trump, because now you can have more performance with independent candidates in of itself and suburban voters who inherently don't agree with Trump's policies right now and are suffering because of the rise of living costs, right? All of this then means that in swing states, you're more likely to be more attractive or appealing because you have distanced yourself from the troublemaker, which is Trump, right? Before I go any further, I'll take a POI.
Why are MAGA voters so rational?
MAGA voters don't have to be rational, but the moment that you have to deal with things like inflation, the moment that you have to go out of your comfort zone, the moment that you inherently have to now pay more for your gasoline, means that you can look beyond that nationalism, because you now see that you have direct impact of someone going haywire, right? But more importantly, I've proved to you that MAGA is not the most relevant voter base here. Stop engaging on that clash. I think then the Republican Party still has like existing institutional cohesion, right? So you have party primaries, you have national committees, you have shared policies, right? But also you have historical precedents, right? So they have had greater leaders like George Bush, etc., and they have voter behavior that have consistently voted along party lines. But Trump is changing this pattern. You need to kick him out to have a safer election campaign. But also, you have a flexible party campaign now. Because note that when you have this time before this madman goes insane, that you use the 2 years you have. The Republican Party can now have strong alignment with leaders that are inherently allow more competition without the influence of Trump. But more importantly, you now have reduced legal and reputational exposure, because note that Trump has faced multiple investigations, civil cases and criminal charges in the 2020s, and is still facing them by his relation with Epstein, etc. But more importantly, this guy readily argues and can through relations with anyone because of his involatility, which means that even important sponsors, like for example Musk, like sponsoring Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis before he sponsored Trump, and now probably now distancing his funding away from let's say like the Republican Party, shows that you can't have him as a stable actor on board. So you need to distance him and shift your campaign focus to more stable messaging and policy. For all those reasons, vote for government.